Dude, I hit 2020 bingo on the card yesterday because Bob Bowlesby came out here saying, I don't believe in cancel culture. I'm like, wait, hold up, time out. What? That I win. I got a sitting league commissioner to use the phrase cancel culture when talking about whether or not to play football or sports, really. Like, I was expecting a pro commissioner to say that, but for Bob Bowlesby to say that on the Paul Feinbaum show in reference to, I wanted to get all the facts, I wanted to try to play football, you could have said that without saying cancel culture because, yo, Bob, that ain't what that actually means. So who are you getting your notes from? Whoever you got your notes from, Bob, did you a disservice, Bob, because there are those of us that actually, live in the 21st century and talk to people in the 21st century who know what that phrase means. And I have never heard a worse use of the phrase cancel culture. I'm like, okay, that means we got to retire it, right? Just like when some people were talking about Becky, had to retire that. Karen, gonna have to retire that. You know what I mean? On Fleek, had to retire that. Ratchet, had to retire that. I think we got to retire cancel culture because Bob Bowlesby out here talking about cancel culture in reference to playing football. And I'm like, did anybody ask you? So like when I heard that, I had to go back and listen to it to make sure I wasn't getting it out of context. And I'm not. He really thought cancel culture was about canceling football. To which I've never seen this side of Bob Bowlesby before. Like the Bob Bowlesby that we have seen that runs the Big 12 is vanilla, right? He's the dude that we dunk on for Oklahoma having so many 11 a.m. kicks, right? He's the dude that we say, hey, why don't you fight more for the Big 12? Or can you come up with a better argument for the Big 12 other than the bowl records of the Big 12 teams? Because, that ain't very good either. Seeing Bob Bowlesby be a saber rattler was not on the card either. So like I said, I've scratched bingo out like 6 times on the 2020 card. So knowing that we have these Power 5 or I see Power 3 commissioners that want to play ball, that are going to try to play ball, I'm with you as well because the only way that this gets worse is if you don't get to finish the season. Because I can't see anybody trying to mount a spring season even right now. And I certainly can't see it if you got to cancel the season, say mid-October, early November. I just don't. I think everybody's going to have to shut it down and wait until next year because now you're truncating some things and you're forcing some issues that are going to have some long-term ramifications beyond pandemic, right? Beyond vaccines, beyond controlling the outbreaks. Like, you can cripple the sport right now if you screw this up. And I wanted to underscore that. Do you think I'm being alarmist there too?
No, I think you're right. Okay, because this is my big thing, right? So you brought up spring football, and I'm so glad that you did. There is no way in hell that spring football, there's no way. I have a hard time believing that that is going to happen, and it's going to happen effectively. So then, if football is going to be a lost cause, which I hope it is, just go for it in the fall, man. And if you can't go for it in the fall, just don't. It's a bummer that the fact that so many people aren't on the same page right now when it comes to these issues. Maybe that's just the nature of what we're dealing with, and it's as simple as that. But I understand they're trying to come up with creative solutions. I just don't think spring football is the right way to do this. And I think a lot of these players are trying to indicate that with some of these opt-outs. But in the end, I mean, we're still on this collision course to complete unknown. And it's a shame that people want to try and be uniform with some sort of fall football season, and people insist on pushing this thing towards the spring and just seeing what happens.
Goodness me. Yeah, we'll find out how that goes for the FCS, I think, more than we'll find out how that goes for the Big Ten and the Pac-12, because there's nobody in the Big Ten wants to play spring football for any reason whatsoever, especially knowing now that the NCAA Football Oversight Committee, led by Shane Lyons, West Virginia Athletic Director, is proposing not to let early enrollees play in the spring and not to let anybody that played in the fall play in the spring. So that's how they're going to try to curtail that while also freezing eligibility, which is going to create a different kind of cluster next year. Because, some people want to bring in 25 kids. They might have, 25 seniors that want to stay. Like, this is an interesting year for Oklahoma because there are only there are only like 2 seniors, I want to say, on the defensive side of the ball. And because of that, like there's a crap ton of juniors, right? Or third-year players. Oklahoma could be stacked in 21 and 22, depending on how they decide to do this eligibility thing, because they're so young. Like, this is exactly the year for a Big 12, an SEC, or an ACC team to field a mostly sophomore and junior football team, because now Rattler's got an extra year, right? Jade Hazelwood's got an extra year. Theo Weiss has an extra year. Deshaun White has an extra year. Like, can you imagine how good this team might be in 21 and 22 if it breaks to be like, we're just going to ask you not to, we're just going to ask that you make room with your seniors if you want to bring in freshmen? Like, I've only started to wrap my mind around that and how much that's going to suck for Big 10 and Pac-12 teams who don't get the extra reps, who get 12-hour practices where Oklahoma gets 20-hour practices in a week, who aren't playing for anything worthwhile, and who are trying to cobble this together, by the way, in the middle of a environmental catastrophe going on in the state of California right now, where it's quite literally changing the color of the sky. Goodness me. Like, have you even thought about what the ramifications of what we're doing right now will look like in 21, 22, 23?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to. And, like, not only because of what you're talking about when it comes to the roster management, but the recruiting aspect of this. I mean, the supply and demand of scholarship opportunities, especially to major universities like Oklahoma, is going to be absolutely insane to keep up with. I mean, it's just going to be simply limited, and limited is probably the understatement of the century, because how are you going to go about planning for taking 20 kids in 22 or 23 when you could have almost everybody back who's like a junior, and they could go play for another 2 years? I have yet to really figure out and like comprehend just how insane the situation is with this extra eligibility thing. But I also, like, in the midst of my attempt to try to come to terms with it, I feel terrible for the recruits, right? I mean, this is going to shut kids out left and right. And I think the NCAA is going to have to find a way to navigate this situation in the future. Because, I mean, we talk about what does it mean for 22, 23. I don't think the schools can put that on their shoulders. The NCAA is going to have to figure out a way to allow these programs some sort of reprieve, because you're taking away a bunch of dudes' opportunities to go play D1 college ball while you're letting a bunch of other guys just kind of figure it out for themselves how long they want to stay at a university. It's a messy situation. I don't necessarily know how we got here, and I don't really know what it's going to look like in the future, but in the now, man, it is freaking insane to just talk about.
Yeah, man. Like, I'm interested to see how many kids get taken by the Power 5 schools, and then which one of those kids choose to go play in the Belt or Conference USA or the Southland, and how much stronger those programs might get, to say nothing of the FCS powers like Richmond, North Dakota State, Kennesaw State, and the like, because, like, this could, again, reshape everything we know about college football, which, as a storyteller of college football, I'm excited about. On the other hand, you know, there's human cost all over the place, to say nothing of the financial strain that we're going to put on the sport itself. We started out like with no energy and have somehow made it to an hour, Colin. Like, I'm very proud of us.
Yeah, man, I was dead when we were coming into this thing, but look, it's football talk, right? It gets us out of us. So I'm excited to be doing these. I'm glad we're back in the groove of the season, man. It's going to be fun talking football every week with you. So I can't wait to see what happens come Saturday, and I can't wait to recap it here pretty soon.
Amen. That is Colin Kennedy. Follow him on Twitter at ckennedy247. That is ckennedy247. Dropping news and notes at ouinsider.com. Now is a great time to join up at ouinsider.com as a VIP member, where my man Brandon Drum is dropping insider notes every single damn day. They are robust. They are long. The man does not sleep. He only lives to report this stuff. I'm very excited to be over there. I think you can get in for 60% off the normal pricing now. So take advantage of that, folks. We'll be back to talk about this probably like the very next day, do the post-game show, and then we'll talk again to set you up for the bye week and get into what we think is going to be a wild Big 12 season. I have deleted my Twitter account. We'll talk to you next time. Deuces.